Okay, so we are continuing on with our Svelte, Sapper and WordPress tutorials, and in this episode we are going to learn how to handle categories, because of course that's one of the main features of WordPress. So behind the scenes of this video I already created some categories and added my posts to it. So what we are going to be doing is something like this, actually exactly like this. So on our homepage we are still getting the list of all of our posts, but on the left side now we have categories, and if we click one of those we would get posts only from books, from comics, from movies. And also what we want to do in this episode is we want to make this pagination work somehow. Okay, so this is what we are going to be doing in this episode, and as you will see it's kind of a lot of work, so we better get to it. So before we get too deep into the code, I just want to let you know that this isn't actually the preferred way to do this type of site. And I'm not going to do it the right way in this episode because we already started on this path, so we are going to finish it, and then we will have an episode in which we will refactor our code, and then I'm going to explain to you why that way is better. And it has something to do with fetching our posts through the browser or through server renders. When you publish this site online, doing it this way, your site will work, of course, but it will perform better once we do it the preferred way, which is going to be server-side rendered kind of way, so your site will be more performant and so on. But as I said, we're going to be doing that in one of the future episodes where we will refactor our code and see the differences between both approaches. So first of all, what we want to do, we want to create a category list component, which is going to be listing all of our categories, of course. So to do that, I'm just going to go to my components, new file, and I'm going to call it category list.svelte. Click OK. And I'm just going to copy and paste the code in right here because this is something we already done a few times in this series. So first of all, we are just importing on mount, we are setting our categories array, we are setting our URL, API URL, and then we are just fetching our categories. Of course, if we go to our browser and go to our API, you can see that if you go to categories, you would get the list of all of your categories, right? Great. Now, we want to, of course, display those categories somehow, and I'm just going to copy that and paste that in also, because we just iterate from whatever we get from this array right here, and then we set the href or link to those categories to be categories.slug, and of course we want to display the category name. Okay, so next thing we want to do, we want to go to our index.svelte file, and in it we are going to display that category list. So I'm just going to paste that in because I just added some styling. So we have cats and posts styling, we are displaying our category list, and we are displaying posts lists in this rep right here. And also I'm going to add a little bit of styling right here, so just that the category list and post list can be one on the left of another, right? They can be side by side. So I'm just going to add display flex to cats posts. And of course, I need to import category list right here to be able to display it. Okay, now that we are imported this, I'm just going to save this and let's take a look at what we got. Okay, so we got books, comics, movies, and uncategorized, and our posts. Next thing we want to do, we just want to style this a little bit. I'm going to paste that in also because we don't want to waste much time on this. As I said, we have a lot of stuff to do in this episode, so I'm just going to paste this in. It's going to be just a little bit of styling. And we're just removing the margin, adding margin right, adding some padding, some background, and removing the list style. If I save this, take a look at our page right now, this is what we get. Okay, so we got our categories, we got our posts. Next thing we want to do, as you can see right here, if I click on books, the URL changes to categories books, which is okay, but since we still didn't define the route for our categories, we get 404 not found. So we are now going to define the route so that we can display something right here. So how do you define routes in Sapper? Well, you go to routes folder and create a new folder right here called categories. And then in that file, since we are getting the categories by slug, we are going to create slug, just like we did for the articles, slug.svelte. Okay, and now I'm going to paste code in here, which is pretty much the same code as we have on our index file. The only difference is this title right here and the title or metadata for our page categories. And also one difference is because this is on a deeper level, we have to call our components with this, right? We add just one more dot slash. And that's about it. Everything else is exactly the same as on the index page. So I'm just going to save this and let's just check out if this works. Okay, so as you can see right now, we are on category books and we are getting this. If I click on comics, the URL changes, but nothing else actually changes because we still didn't implement the logic for this right here to change on our URL change. So that is what we are going to be doing right now. Now, most of the logic for displaying the posts by category is going to be done in this posts list.svelte file. And first of all, we are going to be needing to import stores from Sapper app and then get the pages from stores, the page variable from stores, so that we can access the page and parameters of the page that we are currently on. And access the changing slug in our URL bar, right? So that we can reactively display the posts depending on the category. So next thing we are going to be needing is category ID. So let cat ID is going to be equal null for now. Because we are going to be needing this, because if we want to display the posts from the certain category, we can go to our API and do something like categories equals to, right? So now we are going to get all of the posts from the category 2, which is books, right? So it is going to be just 4 posts right here. Great. Now that we have all that set up, let's talk a little bit about reactivity. So I hope you know that in Svelte, if you want to make something to be reactive, you have to tell Svelte by doing this $sign right here. So we are going to do that, and then we are going to say if process browser, so if we have access to the browser, we just want to create this conditional tag right here just for the brevity's sake. And then we want to also say if page.path is not equal to the front page. Now this is not a very good way to do this, and as I said, we will refactor this code, and then we will have much better code quality right here. But for now, we just want to check if this is front page. If this is not the front page, then we are on category page, and then we need to do something right here. For example, we can take a look what do we have in this page variable. So I will just do something like path.log just to see what's going on, right? So if I save this, go to our browser, and I'm sorry, I written path right here instead of page. That's why I'm getting the page is not defined. Okay, the path is not defined. Okay, save this, go to our browser. Now we get this right here. So this is that page variable, and we get the host name in it, we get some params in it, and we get the slug in it. This slug is going to be important to us. Also, we get the path. So if I go to the home page, we will not get this because we said right here that we want to console log this out only if we are not on the front page. So if I go again right here to the books, we will see this again. Okay, so this is going to be very useful for us. So what we want to do now, we want to get the category ID first. And to do that, we will need to fetch some data and then get the category ID that we are currently on by the slug of that category. So right here, I'm going to just paste this in and I'm going to go through that, because this is also the type of code that we've seen over and over again. We need to get the category ID and we need to get it through the slug. Now, why is that? Because we are accessing our categories through slugs, right? If we were to access our categories through IDs, our job would actually be much simpler. Because we would already have that category ID. Because unfortunately, we can't get the posts by category slug. We can just get them by category ID. Now, for this reason, I would suggest when doing some project like this to actually create custom endpoints, so to make your job easier and so that you don't have to fetch stuff from the server so often like we do right here. I have an episode on that, so check it out in the cards in the upper right corner, right? Check it out. I have a video about creating custom WordPress endpoints. As you will see, it is not that hard. So you can actually construct the API the way that it suits you and to make as little calls to the server as possible. But for now, we are actually we are defining this function category ID. Actually get category ID. We are just fetching categories slug from our server. We are getting the category by slug. So if I go right here and do categories and then slug equal books, I will get that category. And in that category, I will have an ID of that category. So we will go right here and then we will, of course, return the response. And in that response, we will get the result. The result is, of course, going to be this. And from that result, we can read the category ID and then we will set that category ID right here. So what I can do now, instead of console log page, I can do console log get ID. Save this, go to the browser, and now if I refresh this, this of course doesn't work because I forgot to do something, and that is we actually need on page change. So this will all be reactive. So whenever our URL changes, we actually need to call this function right here, which I forgot to do. So get category ID by slug, and we are going to get that slug from page params dot slug, right? So if I save this, let's hope this works. Now we get number 2. If I click on comics, we will get 4. If I click on movies, we will get 3, and so on. Okay, so we are getting those IDs. Now we have enough data to actually get the post from that category. So to get those posts, I'm going to create another function, which I'm going to call get category posts. And I'm just going to also paste it right here because it's the same code all over again. As I said, this is one of the reasons why this approach is not so good. As you can see right here, we're constantly just repeating the same code all over again. So we are fetching our posts, and per page is going to be currently 5. Categories is going to be cat ID. As you can see, I'm not passing that directly into this function because the cat ID is actually our state, something that would be called state in something like Vue or React. So this is our state, and this function is always going to have access to it, so I don't need to pass it in manually. So we are just getting the posts per page and categories with cat ID of something, right? Just like I showed before with this example. So instead of cat ID, we can put do something like 2 right here, and we would get all of the posts from the books category. But we are, of course, want to do this dynamically. So we are getting 5 pages, 5 posts per page, and we are getting categories by the cat ID that we defined right here. And because this is defined right here, I'm going to call that function here. So get category posts. And of course, when we return that response, then we will get the posts. Posts is also our state, which are defined here. So when this happens, our state is going to be this actual result, and then all of this should automatically be displayed in this post list. So let's see if this works. If I save this, go to our browser, and as you can see, we already have a smaller number of posts. If I click on books, we actually are on books. If I click on comics, as you can see, those posts changes. If I click on movies, we get this 3 posts. If I click on uncategorized, there are no posts in that category, so we get nothing. Of course, you should put some conditional logic right there to display some message if there is nothing in your response. Okay, so now we are getting those posts, but of course, as you can see right here, the pagination is still the same and it's acting weirdly and it's getting all of our posts. So the pagination currently does not work. So we need to make this pagination work depending on which category we are currently on. So now for this pagination to work, it's not that hard actually, because we already did this. We just need to make it work for our category posts. So in this get category post, we need to do the same thing that we are doing on our page mount. So we need to define total pages, and then we need to create that pages array, so to display the number of pages that we currently have on our category. So I'm just going to copy this total pages and pages, and right here where we are getting our response, so I'm just going to paste this in. So we want to get, of course, total number of pages for that category from our response header, and then we want to create total pages, and when we get the result, we want to set the current page to be 1 is equal to 1. Of course, every time you change the category, you will get to the first page of that category. So now if I save this, this will, I think, kind of work. As you can see right here, we are getting just 1 page, and on uncategorized, because we don't have any posts, we are not getting anything. So let's just make this a little bit clearer. So I'm going to go right here, and instead of per page 5, I'm going to say per page 2. So just that we can get some pagination going. So if I save this, go to our browser, we can now see that we are getting 2 posts per page, and we have a second page right here. But this still doesn't work, because if I click on this, I get actually all of the posts from the actual posts without the category. This is something that we would get on our homepage. Now, why is this happening? Well, this is happening because on our change page function right here, so every time you click on a new page, just to remind you from the previous episode, you will call this change page function, and that change page function is going to get 5 posts per pages independent of any category, and it's just going to display that. So this right here does not work for us. So we need some way to say to this function, okay, so do this if you're on home page, or if you don't have category ID set up or defined, so then do this. But if you do have category ID, then this URL right here needs to change in some way. And I'm just going to copy and paste this in because I don't want to write it out. And I'm going to explain it. So I'm just going to put this right here. So it's very simple. So we are checking if get ID exists. If it doesn't exist, or actually if it does exist, or if it isn't null, then we want to call this API. So we want to call per page is equal to, and categories is get ID, and the page is the current page, right? And if we are on a home page, then cat ID does not exist, then we want to call that URL from before. And this should actually make our pagination work as it's supposed to. So if I save this, go to our browser and click right here, as you can see now I'm just getting 2 pages. If I go to comics, also to movies, if I go right here, I get just this one post. If I go to uncategorized, nothing. If I go to homepage, then I get this, what we did in the previous episode. If I go to comics, then this works, and so on. So as you can see, this all works now. Okay, so for your homework, yes, I'm giving you homework again, but if you don't get this, I'm going to post the solution at the beginning of the next video, which is probably going to be refactoring all of this, and I'm going to show you a better way how to deal with all of this right here. So for your homework, if you click right here, right now, you will go to the address or URL, articles, and then the name of the file. Now, what I want you to do and try to figure out on your own, how you can make this address to be articles, then the category, then the name of the article. It's not that hard to do, but as I said, if you get stuck, the solution will be at the beginning of the next episode. Okay, so anyway, this is it for this episode. Remember, everything we did here will be available for you on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.